Welcome to Her Vision, Her Voice, a show where we celebrate the bold and powerful voices of women who are redefining the music and film industries. I'm your host, Aline Kazarian, and in each episode, we'll dive into conversations with trailblazers who have turned obstacles into opportunities, using their vision to amplify their voices and inspire change. Today, I will be joined by JJ Anderson in the second hour of the show. Jharae J.J. Jordan Anderson is a self-taught filmmaker who fell in love with the connective power of storytelling while attending her parents' NA and AA meetings as a kid. The witnessing of such vulnerable exchanges inspired her focus on creating loving representations of Black and Brown youth, as well as grown folks of color in the media. After graduating from Cal State Northridge, she co-founded the Los Angeles production company HRDWRKER, creating impactful work for organizations like LACMA, Array, and Studio Museum in Harlem. Her debut feature, Sacred Soil, the Piney Woods School Story produced with Anscape, is now streaming on Hulu and Disney+. She also recently premiered her first solo museum exhibition, Sometimes I Feel Like I Am Almost Home, at the California African American Museum. Welcome to Her Vision, Her Voice. I am your host, Aline Kazarian. If you are just tuning in, I am now joined in studio by filmmaker JJ Anderson. JJ, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
I'm so glad you're here because your story, I think, is incredibly unique. And I think your exposure to what storytelling could become is incredibly unique. I think your work is very rich. So I'm just really happy that you're here and that we get to have this conversation together.
Well, you're so kind. I'm very excited to be here. I've actually been looking forward to this. And as I told you before, when we were talking, I did creep on you a little bit. And I just think you're wonderful. I'm always impressed by people who work for these larger entities and then take everything they've learned and then start to build their own rooms, build their own spaces with it. You know, it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of vision. So I'm equally excited to be here with you.
Well, thank you. That's very, very sweet of you. Yeah. How about we start there? How about we start in that area of understanding what storytelling can become and your earliest exposure to it? Yeah. Because as a child, you used to spend time in your parents' NA and AA meetings, which I think in and of itself is already incredible that you were in those sorts of spaces at such a young age. So I want you to think back to when you were little JJ and being in those spaces, what that felt like to be surrounded by that level of vulnerability amongst a group of people, but then what you also were observing at that time about people, about truth, about behavior, all of these things that you might not have even had a language for at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, my parents had me when they were very young. They were 23, both involved in drugs and alcohol. And when my mom got pregnant with me, she decided to get sober. It took my dad a little longer. So I remember very early, and I have a lot of pictures visiting him in rehab, in and out, right? And then he really came into my life in a more stable capacity when I was about 5. And that's when we started to have our weekends together. But with both of them being young and trying to make it, and I think trying to find themselves and trying to find a sense of self, NA and AA meetings were huge for them. That was their community. That was their meditation. That was, I guess, kind of their religion in a way, their spirituality. Like that's where they got right, and that's what kept them on track. So I spent a lot of my weekends in their meetings. Sometimes those meetings would be at my dad's house. They were always in a park or someone's backyard. You know, my mom went to community centers often. And what I first remember is that I was always very comfortable there, you know, very much an extension of family. I was loved and I was celebrated in those spaces. And being able to sit back and listen, I think even at that age, that young age of people's deepest and darkest, lowest moments, to be honest with you, what I remember most is that there was always a sense of humor in it. You know, they wouldn't allow others and they wouldn't allow themselves to sit in despair for too long. The interaction of it, the call and response, you know, folks in the crowd always letting the person talking and tears coming out, that vulnerability that you mentioned, always letting them know that we're here for you, we see you. And also, the biggest thing was that story is the most unifying element that I've ever come across. The healing power of storytelling, being able to look past where someone is from, their upbringing, our differences, and finding the similarities. That's what I learned in those spaces. And that vulnerability is a superpower. I've been in rooms with people who have done things that you wouldn't believe and that they're so ashamed of. But the ability to flip that around, to create something good and then give back, I think that's what we're here for. You know what I mean? It's a service. Storytelling is a service. And I think now that I'm saying it out loud and I'm talking it through, that's the biggest thing I took from those meetings, is that storytelling is a service that you give to others. And that's how I've approached my work ever since. Yeah.
Did you love film at an early age? Was it even a thought that crossed your mind where you were like, I want to be a filmmaker one day?
Not I want to be a filmmaker, because I didn't know it was possible, but I spent a lot of time with my mother. She was a single mother. She was in school, also an activist, so always out and about, only child. So I spent a lot of time alone, is what I'm trying to get at. And I always could count on these VHS tapes to keep me company. And I'm showing my age now, but I had Stand By Me on VHS, Mississippi Masala. Also during that time, it's like the 90s, they had these music video VHS tapes that they would mail out. There was like a monthly subscription. So like Tori Amos and Sinead O'Connor. So I would just pop them in and keep myself company with these stories.
Wow.
And I loved it, it was like this magical ride that felt like it was very much catered to me, but it wasn't. But like it gave me a lot of comfort. And so no, I didn't have any idea that I could be a filmmaker, that I could be a director, that I could be the person creating this work. But I always loved the presence of a great film. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, even more incredible when you think back on, being a child and trying to decipher all of those influences and inspirations and how they all subconsciously had an effect on us, I think is really interesting. So the fact that your earliest exposure to storytelling were the NA and AA meetings, and also on the flip side, this idea of community. I want you to talk to us about community and how you have found your own place in it, what that meant to you then and what it means to you now.
I think, to be honest, community has meant everything to me over the years, and where I see it most relevant actually was in high school. I've been doing a lot of work on myself for the past 2 years and unraveling a lot of my experiences. And I believe in high school is when a lot of the trauma and stuff that I went through at a very young age is when it started to pile up without my awareness around it. So I started drinking a lot in high school. I started dabbling in drugs in high school. I was everywhere but in class, you know what I mean? And thank goodness that I had these wonderful young women around me to walk me through that, and we were walking each other through it, who had come from similar spaces. And they really saved my life, and everything I do subconsciously I do for them. I feel like they raised me in a way. And so starting in high school, community became a huge factor for me, just feeling like you are around people who see you, who understand you, and even if they don't understand you, they're still showing up, and vice versa. And I've been carrying that with myself. I've been carrying that, throughout my trajectory, the personal journey, work journey. I think I moved to Los Angeles in 2009, and I came here to go to school. I went to Cal State Northridge, got my economics degree. And that's why I first experienced lack of community and what that looks like. Los Angeles is very difficult to navigate when you first get here. I think it took me a good 5 years of stumbling and making mistakes and getting in with crowds I thought were the crowds that I thought I wanted to be in, and it just totally backfired. That's when I learned how important community really was, because I didn't have it. And it was actually starting HRDWRKER, which is the production company I co-run today with Tito Molina, that allowed me to rebuild, you know, much like you do here. You invite people on, and when you're lucky, everything aligns, and someone who you interviewed becomes a friend. And through HRDWRKER, I was able to start building a solid community.
Before we get to really diving into your work and what your work really represents, I'm endlessly fascinated by people who have a journey in their creative careers where they study something completely different, but then somehow they find their way into the thing that really makes them tick, which is filmmaking for you. So how did you go from economics degree at Cal State Northridge to finally stepping into that phase of your life where you were like, filmmaking is it for me, and that's what I want to do? What was that turning point?
Yeah, absolutely. So the economics thing, listen, I went through, I'm 37 now, I think that's right. Yeah, 37.
I love that.
You know, the older you get,
I love that. You had to take a little moment.
Yeah, you have to take a moment. What year was I born? I'm 37 now, and it took me, I would say, like my early 30s is when I really started to honor myself and what I wanted in my life and be aware of what I wanted. You know, it was, my inner child was always there, and she was always poking at me, but I only recently started paying attention to her. So everyone in my family on my father's side, and also on my mother's side, everyone's a teacher. They work for the county. They get the 9-to-5, 401k. They have the good jobs. And like, that's what you do. That's where we go. And so I think I wanted to please them. You know, I went to Tuskegee University for my freshman year, which is in Alabama. It's at HBCU. I had the time of my life, but didn't, you know, learn a thing. I was partying. Like, I was really living it up. I was double majoring in poli-sci and English there, and then transferred to Cal State Northridge and just thought, you know, economics sounds cool, might as well. There was no thought about it. It was just a degree. And I kick myself for that, because sometimes I do wish there was more intention around education, but it was what it was, you know, and it got me to where I am now, and so it's all good. But yeah, during that time, I was modeling and doing commercial work, and I was going out on auditions, and I was doing this to pay my bills and get myself through school. And I went to an audition to host a talk show. It was a sports talk show, and I got it, and I was there for about 5 years, and I was originally hired to host just interstitials, but I got my own show. So I was able to sit down with folks and interview them, conduct these like hour-long interviews with folks like Danny Trejo, Ronda Rousey when she was the first female. Yeah, like it was all over the place, and it was Ed O'Neill from Modern Family and Married with Children. It was so random. But I really enjoyed, just as you're doing now, like the conversation aspect of it. And I enjoyed the listeners or watchers writing in and saying, I got this from this, and I love this part of the story. And I saw, again, okay, yeah, this is like the healing power. And so I decided this is what I want to do. I don't know what capacity it's going to be. I don't know how it's going to expand, but I want to build on this. And when I left there, I joined up with Tito to do HRDWRKER so that I could interview the people I really wanted to interview.
So how did you two cross paths? And Tito, by the way, is in studio with us.
He's here. He really
he's not on the mic, but he is here. So how did you two cross paths? And maybe talk about what those initial interactions were. Because some people you meet and you just immediately hit it off, you know? Okay. And I kind of get a sense that maybe Tito was that for you. But in your own words, please.
Well, it's a little messy, so buckle in.
Here we go.
It's a ride. So when I was modeling and going to school, I was on a totally different like program. I didn't really have a schedule because I was doing a lot of online classes. And so all of my friends at that time were like working retail or had 9-to-5s, and I would be so bored with myself that I would just go in and see my friends at work and hang out, you know. all the time. And Tito worked at New Era off of Fairfax. And this was like prime Fairfax era, you know? Like Odd Future would it's just like everybody was dropping in, everyone was around. It was a creative time. And my best friend at the time worked at Adidas next door to him. And she invited me out for drinks one time when they were all going out. And I was on a date at the time with Kent from South Africa. So cute. Still friends today. But I remember he was visiting me from Cape Town. But I remember sitting across from Tito and thinking, he's so funny. Like, this guy's so funny and smart funny, like brilliant funny, you know, astute, where you have to pay attention to what he's saying, and he'll slide one in on you, and like 5 minutes later you'll get what he said.
Love that kind of funny.
Yeah. So then Kent went back to South Africa, and we all started hanging out more, and Tito and I actually started dating like a year later after being friends, you know. And then when Kent found out, he was livid. He was like, I knew it. But anyways.
Wow. This is a lot more dramatic than I thought it was going to be. You said messy, and I was like, okay, I'm very interested now. But this is actually messy.
Young Leo, we're both Leos, you know.
Wow.
Leo behavior. But anyways, Tito went to FITM.
Okay.
Very talented designer, incredible eye. And he wanted to start a clothing company called HRDWRKER, and he knew that I worked at the television network at that time, and he asked if I would help create content around the clothing brand with him, and I said, of course. So we came up with this idea to interview people that we love, people who are community leaders, people who have their own brands, people who are courageous, you know, and who are giving back. And we started doing that. We had no idea what we were doing. We used a cell phone, an Android of all, you know, choices, to record the interviews. We used iPhone headphones to record sound. It was so shitty, but people were down and they were excited. And not a lot of this was going on at that time. You know, this was about 10 years ago. And we would just spend our weekends going from interview to interview to interview. We stopped going out. We started editing for hours at the house. And it slowly developed to what it is today, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so today it's a production company that truly supports cultural institutions and museums. And so we work a lot with, some of my favorite institutions in Los Angeles, like LACMA, the California African American Museum, Ava DuVernay's Jharae. We did some work for Studio Museum in Harlem. We're all in it. You know, we spend our days with artists, and it's really incredible.
I'm a little scared to ask, are you two still dating?
Oh, no. It was a whole thing. Actually, we were just arguing about this because, no, we broke up, like 3 years ago? 3 years ago now. Yeah, so I got a project out in Mississippi, the one that's on Hulu, Sacred Soil, which is on Hulu today. And this is an interesting thing, and I think I talk about it often because I feel that it's important, especially when you're younger. Tito and I were there for each other and loved each other very much during a time in which we really needed that. You know, I think, and I'm sure he and I will talk about it in the car, but I believe that we created a stable family for one another, and something that perhaps we felt like we were missing. You know, not that his mother's lovely and everyone's lovely, but whatever it was, we filled that hole. I think sometimes when you're younger, it's easy to confuse relationships and love, you know? Like, he's absolutely one of my best friends to this day, and someone I will work with over and over again. But in terms of the romantic side of the relationship, it just wasn't for us, you know? But when you're younger, it's like easier to get those things confused. So we stayed together for almost 10 years. And when I went and worked without him for the first time ever, I was able to sit with that reality a little bit, that we're not happy on the romantic side, but we thrive on the working side and the friendship side, and that's okay. Heartbreaking, but it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, so when I came back, we split up. We called it off, and it was very difficult. We just got our office in Santa Monica. I'd come back. He had decorated my office with all my best friends, and it was, it was like a very heartbreaking moment. And we didn't talk for quite a bit. Very angry with one another, confused, all the things. Tito did an LA Times article. That's what we were arguing about last night, about our breakup. I was so pissed off about that. But now, like, we worked through all those emotions, and now we're able to be the best of coworkers.
I think that is the most incredible story about friendship, relationship, business relationship, all in one.
Yeah. And
how it can all shift and make us change the way that we approach life in these nuanced ways.
Yeah.
But I'm also very curious about how intergenerational healing kind of came into the mix, if it did at all, when you two were dating, because there is this ongoing theme of healing in your life that has now translated into your work. And specifically about intergenerational healing within Black and Brown communities.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wonder if with these sorts of relationships and with these sorts of conversations, you came to an understanding of what your work was ultimately going to be about and how you were going to express, your lived experiences.
Yeah.
Because that's really, I think, where storytelling comes from, right? It's these lived experiences that we accumulate over the span of our lives. Not always, but I think a large portion of how we tell stories is based on very early experiences that we have, whether good or bad.
Yeah.
Very oftentimes it's both.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wonder if this specific relationship just maybe helped something blossom with your storytelling.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, that was quite a heavy and quite a big question.
It was a big question, and I want to give you an answer that does your question justice. I believe that our meeting in our relationship came to us during a time in which our inner child were really just searching for understanding and for love. And I think that Hard Worker was a vehicle for that. I think offering love and understanding to others who might be searching for it, but us also finding our place in that. Both Tito and I are self-taught filmmakers, and so there was a lot of imposter syndrome that we had to deal with in the beginning, especially when we started getting hired to do work. And I don't know that any other person could have encouraged me the way that he did through his words and through his actions and through his affirmations. And I hope that I was that for him as well. I think that we have a solid understanding of our values, what we value in others, what we value in the world, what we want to see. And we're willing to sacrifice everything for that, truly, I mean, it took us 4 years to build Hard Worker. He had a regular job. I didn't. I was at the house just building and reaching out to people. 4 years of having $25 in our bank account, after bills are paid. Like, that's it. No one was investing in us. No one was encouraging us. It was really our own will. And I don't know that anybody else could have been as scrappy, supportive, just like a down-ass person in those moments, And it's why I went back to work with him now. Because we're both willing to give anything and everything to create this work. Yeah. And there's a standard there. Like Tito set my standard for collaborators.
I think you set each other's standard. Like you're very, you complement each other very beautifully. Just from your voice and just from the way that you're talking about this relationship.
Yeah. There's
a really beautiful compliment between you two. And I think you both sort of level each other up.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honor each other's roles, you know? And I think it's when you find someone who, it's the same reason why you see directors working with the same crew. When you find people who align and who you don't necessarily have to speak to, who just have an understanding, that's something that is so special. And so I really encourage everyone, if you ever have collaborators in your life who feel effortless for you, right? And you're able to be productive, hold on to those people as much as you possibly can. Because it is very rare. It's very rare. Yeah.
Which parts of your upbringing would you say show up in your work in a way that you didn't recognize maybe when you started making work, but that you recognize it a little bit more clearly now?
Yeah. Definitely the spirituality aspect. And I know that seems like the obvious one if you've been listening to this conversation, going to my parents' meetings and whatnot. But I mean, I was so, in trying to hide myself and trying to hide from my pain, I was so disconnected from myself, disassociated from everything. And so even looking back at my work and seeing the hints of like otherworldness or spirituality, sometimes it's a shock to me, you know, but all that tells me is like that there was something, my most authentic self was in there and it was fighting to come out and it was coming up in these little hints. And when I say spirituality, all I mean is that, I guess that the work I do feels connected to like a bigger force or a larger force when I look at it now. That's what I see, you know. I think also there is a hint of nostalgia in my work. I think that comes up in color and conversation and archival photos. I believe that's me reaching back to those young women I was talking about earlier and feeling like I'm bringing them along in some elements that are representative of who they are. And now I'm leaning more into coming of age work. And while it's not a surprise, I am grateful for that because that's where I want to be. You know, but definitely the spirituality aspect. I think I was afraid of those conversations for so long because it would force me to look at myself in a way that I wasn't prepared for. And so I was like sitting across from folks and having them bare their souls for hours on end, and I had no idea what my soul looked like.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. It's kind of shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I love conversations like this. It just because I think being somebody who does a job that is very creative, whether you're an artist or a filmmaker or a musician or, you know, and any aspect of that spectrum, I think it's very easy to get lost. I think it's very easy to feel like you're the only one experiencing a thing.
Yeah.
But maybe that's something that is universal. Maybe it's something we all experience. But I think artists are inherently a lot more emotional and empathetic. And I think we feel a lot deeper. So I think we sit with these sorts of emotions a lot longer. And I think it oftentimes takes us a bit more time to really uncover these aspects of ourselves that either feel scary or that feel daunting or that feel X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about you being a self-taught filmmaker, because I love people who are self-taught. I love people who don't necessarily think going to school is the way to become someone they want to become in their career. And I'm curious to know if there's something that you as a self-taught filmmaker have learned, maybe that people who are not self-taught find out much later in their lives.
Yeah.
Is there something like that for you?
I think absolutely, and I experience it all the time in working with crews, is that I am an advocate for education, but I do believe there is a point where education becomes dictation, and it doesn't allow for as much space to experiment and come up with, like, allow you to come up with your own way, you know?
That's the first time I've heard somebody say education can become dictation.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a perfect encapsulation of what can happen in art school.
Absolutely.
Or in any school.
Yeah.
But I think even more so in art school, where teachers are trying to mold you into something and not allowing you to grow into something. Please continue. This is wonderful.
No, yeah. That's really just what I see, is that especially younger folks, like younger filmmakers, they're so bogged down by these rules and by these structures that it's difficult for them to see past it or think outside of the box, you know? I think everybody is an artist. I think what separates those who create their lives around art and those who, I don't know, maybe doodle every now and then is the ability to sit with yourself and to sit with feelings, and your willingness to do that, you know, your willingness to explore. And so sometimes I feel like the technical knowledge is there with folks who have gone to school and gotten the degree, but the ability to lean into their own inner artist is so fogged up, you know? And then there's a fear that's wrapped around it. Well, if I do this, then it's wrong, and everybody will know, and people will talk, and it's a little heartbreaking, you know? I think I spoke about imposter syndrome earlier. What my imposter syndrome did for me was it made sure that I learned all the rules, but not going to school and not being told what to do and this is what it is, I have no issue breaking those rules at all. In fact, I really look forward to it. I know the rules to know them so I can communicate, but we're going to break the rules, you know? And it's always so fascinating to work with folks who have gone to like the LA film schools and the AFI, because it's hard for them to wrap their minds around, you know?
Do you think communication also comes more naturally to those who are self-taught filmmakers or self-taught any kind of artist?
I do, because chances are if you're self-taught, you might come from a blue-collar background, which means you probably have done a service job at some point in your life.
Yeah.
Which means you need to know how to communicate to different personalities.
Yeah.
You know, so that, of course, is another thing I've noticed, is that folks who are self-taught, who had to work their way up, who working on set but then running to their waiter job or whatever, that these folks are the most pleasurable to work with, because they understand needs, they understand service, again, to go back to that word service, and they understand how to communicate with folks, you know? So yeah, absolutely. So
much of your work centers around these very loving representations of Black and brown youth. And I always wonder, when a director is on set and they're working with, as we've been talking about, so many different personalities and people from all walks of life, I wonder, the people who you are working with, the actors who you are working with, I wonder what you hope that they are taking away from these experiences of telling these specific stories that you're telling.
Yeah, so I think the best example I can give you for that question is my work with Sacred Soil. So Sacred Soil is a feature-length documentary that was shot in Mississippi. It centers on the lives and experiences of a handful of kids who go to this Black boarding school that's been around since the early 1900s. The school was originally founded to support child's growth, you know, mentally, spiritually, academically. And in working with them, one, it was very important to have a crew that was representative of people they might be familiar with, right? So people who looked like them. But it was also very important that these folks would take time to chat with them as people, as humans, and not just treat this like a regular shoot, because these are young, impressionable minds. I always say that youth are our closest representation to our higher power. They are so untouched by society's desires and expectations that they're just themselves, and there's so much you can learn from that, but it's not something to be taken lightly. Yes, let's play, but like, let's be serious about our play, right? When in doing research for this project, I came across a CNN segment that was well done technically, but what it did was it put these kids on a platform and then it grilled them about their traumas, which one of their brothers got shot, what was it like growing up poor, how difficult was it in Detroit, just like, and when you present these questions and prioritize these questions, especially to young folks, what you're telling them is that this is the most important thing about you. Mm-hmm. This is the only interesting thing about you. And so after I saw that, my entire goal with that work was to switch that and let them know that their joy was just as, if not more important than everything they've been through. And we gave space to both, but I kind of let them take the lead. And the other thing I wanted to provide them with was this idea, or this knowing this, that they have agency over their stories. I approach documentary work, I think, differently than a lot of people, and it's because I'm working with people that I love and that I care about. I'm very mindful of the images that we have in mass media around Black and brown folks, especially youth. And so I wanted them to feel like they had some agency over their story. Even some of the kids, like over the summer, they sat with me while I was editing. They picked out some of the music. They gave me feedback,
That's awesome.
And so to answer your question is, I just wanted them to have that, to know that they were being witnessed, that they were being seen, not for this image of what someone wanted them to be, but for who they were, and interestingly enough, like, they gave that back to me as well, so, yeah, that feels very important.
That feels like the sort of classic student-teacher type of relationship where you think that students go to school to gain all of the understanding and the learning and, the knowledge and everything. But I think there is this, two-way street sort of thing happening where the teacher also accumulates just as much knowledge, just as much understanding, just as much empathy.
Yeah.
So that project and the fact that you got to work on that feels like that sort of relationship.
Absolutely. And there is a young girl, Takira. She's actually a senior this year. I met her when she was a freshman, and she's going on to Spelman University. She used to tell me all the time, we got really close, and she would tell me all the time, we're the same, JJ, we're the same. And I just thought, okay, like, I could see it, but I thought she meant more of the same interests, and like, we listen to the same music and we dress alike. It wasn't until a year later I realized that Kira and I were very much, she was right, we were the same person. So much of what we went through in our lives mirrored each other's. And I realized that as I thought I was helping her through this moment in her life, what I was really doing and what was really happening is she was mending me at that age in my life. She was 15 at the time, and God, I wish I had someone in my life then to help me through that moment. And I was also healing myself through her, like, it took me a while to get what she was saying, though. It was the most incredible experience. I still have folks from that crew text me randomly like, God, I missed that project, because it was the hardest damn project any of us had ever worked on, but it was the most rewarding because of those kids. It's
usually always like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the hardest pieces that we have the privilege to work on that really test us in ways that we didn't think we could handle.
Yeah.
But that end up being the most rewarding and the most fulfilling.
Yeah.
Because again, I can hear it in your voice and the way that you're talking about it. It just sounds like you are completely fulfilled by that project and being able to tell that story.
And it took a while to get there when I came back. So basically what happened was was a student who didn't have anywhere to go for that summer. Mind you, this is a boarding school, so a lot of the kids it's complicated. At the time, we were feeling like we were going to have a last leg of the project, so we were going to shoot one more time. It didn't end up happening. It was more like a pickup thing, but we had everything we needed. But I agreed to stay back for the summer to take care of this kid. And then, of course, a bunch of others tagged along, and they were like, summer camp. So for 3 months, mind you, I don't have any children, right? I was taking care of these kids, and they were taking care of me, and I was editing, and we got them jobs. It was like it was the best summer of my life, you know? And it was also the most honest I've been in my life, because again, you're working with kids, you're showing up for kids, and they sense and they know everything. Anyways, after we concluded and summer ended, the film came out, what happened was I had a complete emotional breakdown. Complete emotional breakdown, because I realized in working with them and being in that space, that was the most me I'd ever been. And when I came back to LA, nothing fit anymore. And I did not know what to do with that. And I was terrified. Like, the people I was around, they didn't fit anymore. I didn't fit with them. They didn't fit with me. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know who I was. I had accomplished this huge goal of getting my first feature project on a major streaming platform. And I felt so empty. You know, I felt so damn empty, and it scared the shit out of me. And I had to basically like go stay with my dad for a bit and get myself together and figure out who I was going to be, you know? It was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. And I used to see it as a punishment. I would tell my dad, and thank goodness for my dad, you know, and all his experience in NA and AA, and like he really brought me back to life. And he was like, I know this feels like a punishment right now, but this is your gift from the kids. Truly. And when you get out of this, you will be the strongest you've ever been, and it's all going to make sense. And he was right, but for 6 months to a year, I mean, some people call it dark night of the soul. I call it hell. Like, it was so rough, you know? When you go through, I can't describe it, like going through your whole life thinking you got it down and you have a plan and this is a trajectory, and like waking up one day and realizing none of that shit matters and you don't have control over everything, and everything you've been doing, you've kind of just been moving, like going through a fog. It's a scary place to be. But it was a gift that the children gave me, and I'm so grateful. You know, I'm so grateful.
I think it unlocked something in you that was maybe buried deep within. Mm-hmm. This is something I am learning right now, which is how trauma and pain and anger and sadness is stored in your body for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And then it gets to a tipping point and it just, the dam breaks, you know, and you are exposed to everything that you have been sort of just pushing down without even really realizing it. But it's because you just had to move forward. You just had to live another day. You had to keep going. But it catches up with you at some point. Yeah. And sometimes it takes people. Sometimes it takes experience. Sometimes it takes some freak accident, something to happen to get that to be unlocked. And usually it's really fucking painful.
It is.
And it sets you on a healing journy. Yeah,
it sets you on. But I think it can't not be painful.
Right.
Like, the growth only comes from the pain, right? I appreciate you saying that. Are you going through?
You know, mine ended up becoming a physical manifestation of very deep emotions and trauma. And now it's presented itself in a physical way. Yeah. it's a very, very stubborn back issue that I am trying to get over. It's been 4 months now, and it's been a very start, stop kind of, healing journey. Things that I think will help, I try, it doesn't, and I've gotten to the point where I'm learning that being gentle and being slow and being even more intentional than I thought I was being is really what's going to set me on a path of healing and being able to manage this sort of pain. Because I know I'm not broken. I know I'm not, permanently damaged in any way. The X-ray and MRI results have proven that to be true. Do you know what I mean? So like, I know that there are things though that have been stored in my body for so long because I spent so much of my life having to deal with emotions like sadness and anger and frustration and I was incredibly hard on myself. I've always been really hard on myself. I still am, but I'm learning how to be better about it because I think it's A, a superpower, but B, also your fucking worst enemy. So it's just a matter of learning how to manage that for myself. I appreciate you asking, by the way.
Of course.
I haven't actually talked about this at all with anyone outside of my very closest friends and my mom, who has seen how this has been affecting me. Because ordinarily I come off as, oh, she's fine. There's nothing wrong with her. Because I don't really show those sides of myself. I don't project that into the world. I keep that in a very tight circle of people.
Are you the strong friend?
I'm the strong and very empathetic friend. Yeah. I'm the friend that people will come to and just everything is like, people have told me they feel very safe with me. Yeah. And I feel very honored by that. Yeah. Because I think we live in a world where people are just constantly talking. And there's very little listening. It's just projection. And it's so fucking exhausting.
It's extremely exhausting.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's...
Well, what are you doing for yourself?
Well, a lot of physical therapy, which I'd never done before. I've tried acupuncture, which I'd also never done. I'd gone to a chiropractor before, and that evidently was very helpful 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think it was one of those, like, Band-Aid type of helpful. Like, I felt great, and I was like, oh, no more pain. Yeah. Wonderful. 2 years went by. Bam. Just it hit me out of nowhere. I literally was catching up with a friend in a coffee shop, and I'd been sitting there for like 2 hours. Yeah. And I felt the kind of back spasm that I had felt 2 years prior, where it just like hit me out of nowhere like a ton of bricks. And I was like, oh, what's that? Yeah. And so this time around, it just was not wanting to go away. It was like trying to, I think, similarly to what we were talking about earlier about unlocking this thing within you, I think that's what it has been doing to me, is making me realize that all of the years that I was so hard on myself weren't necessary. Like, I really didn't have to be that way. Every time that I lost my temper was really not fucking necessary, because I can get very emotional and Same. I can like, I know I've inherited that temper from my dad. Yeah. But I think learning these things now at 33 is so much better than if I learned these things 10, 20 years from now. But it's also hard, right? Because it's like, I wish things were a little bit easier. Who doesn't? Yeah. But like you said, I think these sorts of things have to be painful in order for it to sit us down and make us live with it and reevaluate who we are, how we operate, how we live. And it's hard.
It is hard. And if you're stubborn like I am, which it sounds like you might be.
Yeah, I'm an Aquarius. So we're polar opposites on the astrological chart, but it makes us like the best of friends.
Hey,
so yeah.
This is all coming together. That's making sense. But if we have to learn are very hard lessons in order for them to sit with us.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure there were many signs that you saw, you know, like, might want to calm down here. Maybe I should just ease up on myself a little bit. And then life was like, oh, really? Okay. Now you have to sit your ass all the way down, you know?
Totally.
But you will get out of this and you're doing the work. And then when you do, you'll remember.
Yeah.
Next time that voice starts talking in your head, telling you you're not doing a good enough job, you'll tell it to shut up.
Yeah.
You know?
Precisely.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll be much easier to do it.
Absolutely.
We don't want any more back issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're actually the first person I've had on the show in the entirety of my 7 years of doing this where you have flipped the questions on me, and I really appreciate it. No, I do.
Really?
Because the conversations I have are always very conversational.
Yeah.
But I for the life of me don't remember any of my guests flipping questions on me during our conversation. So I thank you.
Well, we kind of have the same role, just in a different space. You know what I mean? And it's way more, it's all selfish. Like, it's way more fun for me to learn about you than it is for me to talk about myself. Yeah. So if there's room for that, I'm always going to sneak one in.
Well, I'm so glad you did. Yeah. it was actually really nice. I hate that we're running out of time. We really only have like less than 15 minutes left, but I think I really want you to talk about your first solo exhibition at the California African American Museum, because I'm so drawn to the title. Sometimes I feel like I am almost home, and I emphasize the almost because I think it plays a part here in the fact that the title alone makes you think it's both very intimate, the experience of being in a space and experiencing a show. Yeah. But then it feels unresolved. And I want you to unpack that and what the feeling of being almost home unlocks in you.
Yeah. So the show, Sometimes I Feel Like I Am Almost Home, it's the main piece, it's a 16-minute short film that was shot in Columbus County, where my dad's side of the family is from. Columbus County, North Carolina. And the work revolves around this young girl named Sunflower, who grows up pretty lonely. And she, in order to combat her loneliness and her isolation, she learns how to split herself into two. And one day, half of Sunflower disappears. And so she writes a song and play and prayer to bring her back. And that's the film, that's the journey of Sunflower calling herself back to herself. The play part are these childhood games that my family members played across the board, which is a huge family ritual, just the idea of play. So like red light, green light, hand games, running through the forest, jumping off of things, playing in water. And then the prayer part comes in these conversations that are had with community members and family members within Columbus County. So the work is it's a hybrid documentary experimental narrative piece. And this is the work I made after my emotional breakdown. You know, this is where I put all of that. You know, everything I was feeling, I put it there. Alchemized it a bit. And the title, Sometimes I Feel Like I'm Almost Home, means I am doing the work, but I'm not quite there yet. I don't know that I'll ever be, but that's okay. And talking to someone who's hard on themselves, and I've always been really hard on myself as well, I had to kind of like come to that realization, is that perfection doesn't exist. Do your best and fucking move on. Stop it. Don't be ridiculous. You know, like really don't be, and now I'm being hard on myself, but like, don't be ridiculous. We're evolving all the time, and that's the point of life. That's it. It's growth. That's it. So if you are making an effort to be the person you want to be every day, you know, you're in a great place. And it's just about leaving it at that. You know, every day I'm trying to get to my most authentic self, my most authentic version of self, because I think that's what we're here to do. We are here to be us. And when you live in honesty and when you live, as the unique soul that you were meant to be, you attract those who want to do the same and inspire others to do the same as well. You know, so I that's the purpose, but it's just like, yeah, one day at a time, you know, to quote an NAAA little tradition, one day at a time. But yeah, I'm almost there. I'm doing the work. I'm not quite there yet, and that's okay. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what you feel is perhaps missing right now in the cultural landscape. And as you continue to grow as an artist, what stories you feel drawn to tell or compelled to tell that you just don't see right now?
For me, it's always going to be coming of age work fused with magic and imagination. You know, my friends, the friends that I grew up with, maybe whose parents didn't have the privilege of going to NA and A meetings and were heavy in their addictions, or friends who didn't have that one voice of support, you know, what I remember about them, and it still is to this day, what I remember about them is that they had the most incredible imaginations. They were the alchemists of my dreams, because they could walk out of their house out of some really complicated shit and like create a game that would entertain us all, you know? And I'm trying to figure out how to translate the essence of that into work. I was actually listening to a snippet from filmmaker Khalil Joseph, who just put out Black News, Terms and Conditions. And I can't say it more astute than he did, but what he said was something along the lines of, I've always known filmmaking to be about make-believe, but when I look at Black work in mainstream media, it's always rooted in these extreme realities. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in imagination. I'm interested in creating the reality I want to see. And yeah, like, that's dead on. I want to see that too. You know, I want to see what it looks like when a little 6-year-old flies in his dreams or goes back in time to sit with his mom when she was a kid and guide her. Like, I want magic in Black and brown stories, and so that's the direction I'm going in, you know, direction of love.
Do you know Jharae India?
I don't think so.
Cinematographer.
Sounds familiar.
So I had her on the show 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. Everything you're talking about right now is everything her work embodies.
Incredible.
And you two need to know each other.
Okay.
You two need to meet and try and see if there's a way that you can work together on a project or multiple projects down the line, because her work is also very much in that realm of dreams and imagination, but she captures it through her cinematography.
Okay.
There would be some gelling here.
Okay.
I think you two, I need to introduce you two, because there would definitely be, I think, some really incredible storytelling to be made between the two of you. Okay. Alone.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
I love a hookup. Let's do it. Yeah.
I'm going to leave you with one final question.
Okay.
And this is something I ask all of my guests, these last two questions, but I'm just going to stick with this one, which is something recent that you may have unlearned that has maybe shifted the way that you think about yourself, your place in this world, and how you ultimately want to continue living and working and doing the thing that you're doing.
Yeah. I think love over fear always, you know. As I mentioned before, I too was very hard on myself, could also explode very easily when I get emotional. It was all out of fear. Fear that something wouldn't work out, fear that I was doing the wrong thing, nothing to do with anybody else. And I've replaced that with love, you know, and things are going well, you know. The other one is people pleasing. I've let that shit go.
Good.
You know, I think as a young person, only child, trying to manage emotions in a household, and you can fall into that very easily. You take it on. Everyone's problems, emotions are up to you, you know, trying to control an environment by bending to others and making everything easy for someone. yeah, I'm no longer doing that, you know, and so it allows me to have autonomy over myself, but also the process. And I think having been able to get to know myself more, I no longer question any decision that I make, because I know that it always comes with good intention.
Yeah.
You know, so you can't trick me anymore. But yeah, letting go of people pleasing and love over fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll ask you one more question.
Okay.
Is there anything that you're really looking forward to right now in terms of the work that you're making? Anything that's happening right now?
Yeah, I'm working on a project in which I've been interviewing incarcerated folks and formerly incarcerated folks around issues of post-traumatic growth. So sense of self, spirituality. And I've been going in and out of prison and interviewing people, and I'll tell you, man, it's really interesting sitting with people. I sat a lot with lifers who have made these horrible mistakes when they were 17, 18, and now they're 53 and they're completely different people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm learning a lot in that process, still molding what it's going to be, but I imagine something with magic and, you know.
Have you listened to the podcast Ear Hustle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure, because it's incredible.
Yeah. They do incredible work.
Yeah.
So, but I'm working with both men and women and folks who are in transition houses as well, you know. But these are the people, when you think about like life and growth, these are the folks that I want to hear from, you know, people who have been at the bottom, people who have done things that are hard for them to admit, but they're here sharing their stories because they know that it'll help others. And they have, especially those in prison, they're not going anywhere. They're in there for life, you know? So they really have no reason to change, but they do anyways. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Folks sitting in our administration right now, you know, have all the resources in the world and wouldn't think twice to look at themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm excited about that. See where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
JJ, I can't thank you enough for being here.
Oh, thank you.
This has been the most fulfilling conversation I've had with someone.
Oh,
truly.
Really?
And I think so much of it is because you were so open emotionally. Mm. I know there aren't any cameras or anything, so people couldn't see that you were getting physically emotional as you were talking at one point. But I think that sort of openness is magic. I think it's the one true thing that people can connect with. And I hope that people could hear it when you were sharing your stories. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending part of your Saturday here at the dublab studios.
It's my pleasure, and thank you. I understand now why you're the safe space for your friends, because
thank you.
You have created a safe place, and this has exceeded my expectations. Very keep doing your thing. Please keep doing it, you know.
I will.
More will come.
I will.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And a big thank you to Tito as well, who's in the studio. He actually had sent me an Instagram DM. He was like, you need to. And I was like, yes, we do. See? So big shout out to Tito. And thank you so much for even making this happen. Okay. Wow. Like sometimes you have these sorts of conversations and you're just like, how did the time go by this quickly? But it's always.
When you said 15 minutes, I was like,
I know.
No way. Ain't no way.
I know. Well, that does do it for this is my last episode of the year, which is crazy because it is only a once a month show. So it does go by in quite a flash. But yeah, this is it for Her Vision, Her Voice for this year. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I will be back on January 17th to start off 2026. If you want to know what music I played in the first hour of the show, please make sure to check out the archived episode, which will be out early next week. Stay tuned for Beats of All Nations and more dublab programming coming up next. I'm Aline Kazarian. Have a great weekend. Have a great holiday, everyone, and I will see you next year.